Oh,
What we do.
Look at the bright side. Look at the bright side though. Building materials are down, so you can get your coop built a lot cheaper now.
Yeah.
And eggs are like $6 a dozen in the grocery store. So
I can see it now though, that the city's contract with the sheriff's department is gonna go up, cause they're gonna have to go out and buy chicken catchers, you know, so they can.
No, 12-gauge shotgun.
They can keep.
Oh, yeah, but you can't shoot in city limits.
And you can't butcher them either, so.
Now that we have a different mayor, you can't shoot in city limits.
All right, I got 5 o'clock. Meeting to order. Open Meetings Act is posted on the northwest corner as always, and Lisa, would you call the roll?
Sean,
Here.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance,
Here.
and Skylar is not here yet.
Skylar is, hopefully will be arriving. Nobody heard he wasn't coming, right?
No, I talked to him this afternoon, he'll be here, I think, maybe where they changed a little bit on their hours at CBA,
A little late.
crunching.
He'll be here before the chicken vote. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. As always, you can pass all items with one motion or consider any separate items if you would like.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Can we call the roll?
Brad,
Yes.
Vance,
Aye.
Sean.
Yes.
All right, carried unanimously, 3-0. Next, move on to mayor's appointments and reports. I don't have any appointments tonight. There's probably some that are expiring. I'm gonna have to get caught up on that. But I did want to address one item for the mayor's report, and that would be since the Sand Hills Care Center is not on the agenda tonight, and there's been a lot of discussion, I feel like the city's getting some bad publicity that's I think is undeserved, so I just wanted to give my view of what has happened. Back in May, back in April, we had a joint meeting, discussed some things, and at that point, the city promised to provide, we had budgeted $80,000 in our 21-22 budget year, and the care center needed the funds at that time, so we promised to provide that. That was provided to the interlocal account in May, I don't remember the exact date, but during May that was provided. So we lived up to that part of our agreement. Then in June, of course, was a special meeting here where attended by lots of folks. And at that time, the county voted to provide $250,000 to the care center. The city, we didn't have the 125, it's a 50-50 deal, but they said, if we do this, will you guys pay us back at some time? We agreed to that. We did. You guys said, yeah, we'll do that. So the county had agreed to provide $250,000, and we agreed to pay back half of that with no specified time frame. I remember distinctly at that meeting that the city discussed we did not have any budget authority beyond the $80,000 that we had already provided in May, and so I think that was quite clear. I can remember Brad saying that to the whole group, so I just feel like there shouldn't have been any confusion about that. Then there was another special meeting with the county on July 5th, when we discussed various funding options at that time. Everybody's trying to figure out ways to make this work. We talked about sales tax, bonds, taking on debt, how could we best accomplish the goal. But no action was taken during that meeting, so there was nothing that, nothing to take then. one of the things that I've heard is that the city has substituted the $80,000 for the $125,000 payment. I'm not sure where that's coming from. The $80,000 we provided is what we had budgeted for. The only $125,000 figure would be the half that we would at some time repay the county for their $250,000. So I'm not sure where the substitution comes from, because I can't find anything in any minutes, and I don't remember anything of that discussion. And in fact, most of the proponents of the care center, they state that as we move forward, if the bond issue passes or the vote passes, that additional $100,000 or so money that's generated will replace the $80,000. I've read that several times. I've talked to people about that, and that's what I thought everybody's understanding was. So I just wanted to run through a little bit of that. I think the city's being cast a little bit in an unfair light on that issue. We've provided all the assistance we can while being fiscally responsible, and we'll continue to do that as much as possible, but I think we're going to try to remain responsible in what we do. So, sorry, I know you're used to me not giving a mayor's report, but since and if there's anything else, Sean, if there's things you want to bring up about the care center, I think now would be an appropriate time for some discussion. We can't take any action, but we can sure discuss things if you guys are inclined.
Just a concern that they went ahead and paid $80,000, and then they paid another $125,000, and they're looking at us to match that $80,000, which was never agreed upon. And I'm taking a little slack on the board for that, and really it was never agreed upon. So I just want to make that clear that from the minutes I've looked at from the county and from this meeting, nowhere does it say in the minutes that we were giving that 80. We just agreed to the half of the 250.
Yeah, no, I was gone at that June special meeting, but that's how I remember being briefed and for the meetings I was at. I think what this really raises though, is say this moves forward, especially in things pass and in that time, we need to have a process between us, the county, and the care center. How are those funds agreed upon and obtained?
Yes.
Because we can't be obligated to spend money by the county. They can't write, and not that they did this per se, but they can't just go write $500,000 check and say, well, city, you're supposed to pay what we pay, where's your $500,000?
Right.
In years past, where it was pretty much agreed upon, both entities upfront agreed $80,000 per year for those 5 years, so it was a pretty straightforward process, both cut their check. Now that we're past that point, it's clear we're in a very ambiguous spot. So how does that get initiated? How do those funds get drawn? Do funds get dispersed before both entities agree to a certain dollar amount? To me, that's, if we need to put in the 80 eventually, if at the end of the day, we're 50% owners, and if they're failing at a certain point, we're gonna have to pay for it anyway, whether we sit here and say, yeah, we want to or not, but that's gonna have to happen one way or the other. But presuming they are able to keep moving along, looks like their numbers have been getting better, a little bit of a loss, but as those agency contracts come off the books, it looks to me like they should be able to be breaking even outside of those months with the added payroll cycle. But what is that process? We're going to have to get all three entities on the same page, because I talked to you, it's like we're all a bunch of college kids out for pizza. And, bill comes, oh shoot, who's got cash? Did you bring your wallet?
I got 20.
And that's what it's being right. We're not all on the same page.
Yeah, we
We're
gotta
not-
clean that up, I agree.
We gotta communicate ahead of time, here's how it's gonna go, both entities have to agree to X dollar before any checks get cut. Because them cutting and then we're scrambling on the back end, that's not gonna be sustainable. And that's so hard to track who agreed to what and what timeline, especially where we're on different budget cycles to begin with.
Yeah.
We need to have a process in place to clean that up. So, I mean, obviously, but then, next time we meet, that'll be a little bit more solid about what direction that's gonna take, and if it's gonna be it anyway.
Just had a thought, as far as maintaining, 50/50, would it be possible if we just gave 40 to the county instead of doing the matching 80? Just give 40 back to them, then it'd be like we both donated 40, gave 40 this time around.
I had a conversation with Buddy when I received the $125,000 check to put into the interlocal account. We had a discussion on the phone that day about that, about the 50/50, that the city only budgeted 125. So before I deposit the check, do you want to basically take this back and just cut 45 or square? And the result of that conversation essentially was that it was acknowledged that the city only budgeted 125, but yes, please deposit the check. So I took that to mean that they understood that we were gonna be out of sync and that the county was okay with that. So,
Yeah, and in my mind, that 125 that's budgeted in the current fiscal year, it's like most budgeting, that's an estimate, that's a little over what we expected. We were expecting that $100,000 number. You tend to budget a little higher for unknown things that come up. So, yeah, at least that was my impression of that number. It wasn't intended to be our commitment for 2023, although it may end up being. We don't know at this point.
So what is, I know from attending that meeting Monday, and Sean was there, so with the care center's current claims, they're out of cash, so they are banking on the 125 from you sooner rather than later so that they can meet their current obligations. The 80 that they had talked about would have been a continuation of the, 2022 and 23 budget, which is what the county did. The county did the 80,000 for a general fund, and then per that June meeting, another 250 in the city, the 125. So yeah, that was probably an assumption on the county's part, including including 80,000 for 22 and 23, and without obligating you to do the same. But just from a practical standpoint, going to that meeting Monday, they are gonna be $70-some thousand short if something isn't coming from the city. So I just was questioning, is there something that's headed to the care center this month then from that 125, or what's the city's plan there?
I would expect that. I think what we need to do is talk to the county and clear things up as we move forward, and then figure out, well, what do we need to provide this month to make things work. But I think in my mind, we need to talk to the county and get on the same page before we.
So are you thinking then, because initially they had offered to float the entire 250 with you paying the county back then at some point, is that the avenue you may be looking at taking then, as opposed to the city just providing 125 directly to the care center?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah, and I think that's.
The only reason I'm asking is they're under
Right.
something's gotta be decided
Right.
shortly.
Right. But yeah, I don't know that we have $125,000.
No, I understand.
But,
Just, like I said, just judging from being at Monday's meeting,
I think a big factor would be is getting us, to get exactly what they have, what they need right away, and then worry about the remainder at a later. Just focus on what they gotta have to stay open right now and make sure we get that to them right away, so there's no issues, and then figure out with the county, the difference, how we're gonna come up with the rest of it. But get that taken care of right away.
do you remember that number? I think it was like 72 or something like that they were gonna need.
I wanted to say 73.
Yeah,
I
72
don't
and
want to quote
change
anything without the.
is what I
papers
recall.
in
I
there,
think
right?
that they were short, or planning to be short, I should say.
Yeah, short cash flow wise.
Yeah.
The thing that I think a lot of people, especially looking at those reports, they hear that number, think they're actually short past their bills plus their forward payroll.
Mhm.
And some of their bills are, some of their, it's not payroll because it's the agency, but, so that's a big chunk, so cash flow wise, they just struggle a little bit, but the actual accruals start to look like they're improving.
Yeah, I think their actual profit loss was in the, like 30,000-40,000, and a lot of that
50 of that's
agency,
the
about
agency.
30,000 of that agency's coming off, so if that comes off,
So what I read,
they
they're
may
gonna,
be around that 10 to 20K loss.
yeah,
But-
potentially like even, like.
With another 3 payroll, what Sean, you know, we got another 3 payroll month coming up, I don't know if it's November or October, one of the two, that's,
Those are the months that are gonna,
Well, according to Monday night, all we should see on the next is just one agency person, which will be 4 lines, it'll be 4 pay grades. So the agency should drop drastically, even more, I mean, it should, that's what we were told. Monday night.
Yeah, I agree, I think probably one of us needs to get together with somebody from the county and the care center and in the next day or so and figure out, okay, what do we need to do here to get this for October,
yeah, okay.
and then go from there.
Yeah, I was on, because I know they're banking on money coming, they're relying on money coming
Yeah.
from somewhere, anyway.
Everybody good? All right, we'll get back onto our agenda then. No public hearings tonight. We did 2 last month, so we don't have to do any tonight. Jump into old business. Consider ordinance number 1551, ordinance to amend section 3301 of the Ainsworth Municipal Code regarding poultry chickens, permit requirements and restrictions. Third and final reading. Unless Vance Staples. Now, my understanding is we don't have to read the complete ordinance unless there's somebody in the audience that would like it, we certainly can. We've read it before in full, actually twice, I believe, so.
yeah, you're not gonna tell me until last.
Will
Got
it,
it memorized, got it memorized.
will it be in the paper?
Will the ordinance be in the paper? Do we publish the full ordinance in the paper?
You can publish it in the paper or in pamphlet form, but usually if it's something really important like this that's new and applies, yes, it will go in the paper.
Of course, you understand, but it could be passed tonight, it actually goes in the paper. It'd be passed by- Or not. I don't want to put any thoughts in anybody's head. It could be acted on tonight. Any discussion? Any action?
We need
Let me
to,
read that top
I
part.
say we need to read part of it, don't we? The heading.
Just the heading.
Ordinance number 1551, an ordinance to amend section 3-301 to repeal the original 3-301 of the municipal code of Ainsworth, Nebraska, and to provide for the effective date hereof, and ordering the publication of the ordinance in pamphlet form. Yeah, that's the heading.
I don't know if there's much more to be said about this, to say about it that hasn't been said. I mean, I've spoken to a couple people that are, I think, fairly excited about the passage of it. Spoken to fewer people that are not excited.
I don't know, not this specific ordinance, but in some form, this issue's been on the agenda since May.
Yeah.
I think we've offered ample opportunity for discussion, we've had some lengthy discussions on it, so.
Yep, I would just remind people, just for the minutes, I guess, of the meeting, that it is a permitted, process. So, yes, you can have chickens, but it has to be permitted, so please don't forget to do that part of it.
If you don't get a permit, you're in violation of the ordinance.
What's the permit cost?
20
I think it was
$500
$25.
per day,
$20
20.
for the permit, yeah.
Yearly?
What's that?
Is that yearly?
Yes.
Annually?
Yearly. And it runs with the calendar.
I move to approve ordinance 551, ordinance to amend section 3-301 of the Ainsworth Municipal Code regarding poultry, chickens, permit requirements and restrictions after this third and final reading.
Second.
Is that a second, man?
Yeah.
Okay, moved in second, any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll, Lisa.
Vance,
Aye.
Skylar,
Aye.
Sean,
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. I will say, I think, the process we went through was pretty thorough, and we came up with good guidelines and everything, so.
When we relied a lot on what other communities have done, we set up, what, 6, 10 different towns that currently have ordinances in place, and kind of mixed and matched from each community for what we thought would hopefully work here.
And hopefully the residents will follow the ordinance, and not just put chickens in place without all the ordinance.
Yep. All right, move on to the regular agenda. We can probably open the sealed bid last, since we have people
Sure.
here.
Yep.
Or do we have anybody?
I don't think that's.
Okay, let's move on to, consider LB 840 loan committee, application to facade grant application number 22-02 in the amount of $3573.05.
So this is a facade application for a business on Main Street. They, basically it's for signage, awnings. It's 50% of the total project cost, and the 840 grant supplies. The loan committee met last Thursday and reviewed the application and are recommending approval. Permits have been obtained that are necessary for the project, so, I guess, secondary to that, it probably needs to be noted that part of the sign did go up today,
Actually,
yesterday.
yesterday, and I can explain that one. Actually, this is a job run, the general one, and this certain company that is going to do the sign was instructed by me that the sign was not to go up until I called him. And I had talked to him, even touched base with him a couple weeks ago, and they even knew what date tonight the meeting was, and they knew it could not go up. And I pulled into town yesterday, and that sign is put up. So I really hope that it doesn't change your vote, because technically the applicant did not authorize this. And, obviously I'm gonna abstain from the vote because I am the general on this deal, but I want to make sure everybody's clear. The reason that sign is up there is because it was done without authorization. So it shouldn't be, in my opinion, a violation of this proceeding.
No bill's been submitted, nothing,
No.
nothing's been.
I'll make a motion to approve LB 840 loan for facade grant number 22-02 in the amount of $3,573.05.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, any other discussion? Go ahead and call roll.
Skylar,
Aye.
Sean,
Abstain.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance.
Who is this for?
This is Bruner Frank Roth.
Motion carried unanimously, one abstention. All righty, let's jump down to, discuss and consider land lease of lot 7, block 3, original town of Ainsworth, between the Child Development Center Inc. We talked about this a little bit months ago. Karen, did you have anything you wanted to visit about, add, or?
Well, so we did receive some CRESA funds from Communities for Kids, which is COVID money, essentially. And part of the funds that we can spend on that is for fencing. And so we're on a very limited time frame to spend those funds, which we would really like to do only for materials, not for installation, because installation won't happen until, that's one of the last things that'll be done. And so we would really like to, like for you guys to consider allowing us to have that lot adjacent to ours, so we can double our play space for the children outside. And then we can purchase the materials and we'll store them inside of our building until such time that it would be installed.
What is the time frame on
The money has to be spent by the end of April,
the care center in general, or the facility in general?
like our opening time frame. So once we raise, once we're finished fundraising, then we'll start construction. And so ideally, it'll be, winter of 23, 24, that time frame.
And me and Vance talked about this a little bit earlier, as far as, because we've been talking about maybe doing something with that park there. I guess my opinion on that park, what I do like about how the park is now is just, it's pretty vacant, which means there's a lot of opportunities for different things. We do any kind of event or whatever you wanna do there. So for me, the ideal for that park would be maybe put, some public restrooms and maybe like a focal point, like a small stage or a small, gazebo or something. And anything beyond that, I think would be unnecessary. So for me, I guess I don't see that, missing out on that section a lot would be much of a detriment.
Well, we originally had discussed leasing that 25 feet, right?
Well, the original thought was sell it, and then at the one meeting, we all
had
decided
discussed
that maybe
leasing.
leasing would be better.
I don't think we wanna lose that lot
Yeah.
and for in the future, something happens to where, the place happens to close down, God forbid, but the building sells and the lot would go with that building. And I think we wanna retain ownership forever of that lot.
I agree with
I
that.
don't think there's any problem with leasing it, as long as, we stick to what we agreed to and, offer them the full 25 feet for the lease. I mean, I think we need to stick to what we originally had offered on that. I'm for it.
So other than the lot that goes with the child care center, are there 2 lots, 3 lots? How many feet from,
There's 4 total lots in that space there, and the south 2 are owned by, the south 3 are owned by the city, I guess.
Right.
And then the north.
100 feet.
One is,
So 100 feet total, they've got 25 currently.
yeah.
Basically, this is 25.
So when they're done,
There.
that lot will be cut in half, essentially.
yeah,
If we agree to the lease.
Cut in half or cut in 4?
So there's 4 sections, and the city owns 3. So the child care center has the northern quarter, and if we lease that one next to it, then it'd be put a fence there, and we would have, for city use, those south 2 lots. So it'd basically be half the size for city use, for city park, which sounds like a lot, but I went and kind of checked it out. I think that'd still be plenty of space for any event that might happen there. I mean, we've barely had anything that has happened there, but I think even in the future, if there were more events, I think there'd still be plenty of space, it seemed like to me anyway.
I agree. If we can do something neat with that, hopefully people use it.
Yeah.
That 25 feet, we have people that are planning to use it. And we could put, God knows what in that, and hope people come and they don't utilize it. We've got a group that wants to utilize that 25 feet. I said we let them do it.
We kind of
So
have
if it's 25 feet, then how are you talking about 50 feet?
There's a total
We
of
own
100 feet.
25.
They own 25, we own 75. We're
Oh,
talking
they
about
already
leasing them
have
an
the
additional
25.
25.
Gotcha.
So it'd be 50 feet that they would
Okay.
control,
I
50 feet
see.
we would control.
They told us before they don't need that extra 25 feet, but it would help with their planning and stuff like that. It'd be less congested for the kids and stuff.
We kind kind of have a template of a lease agreement. Did you guys,
No,
had you talked?
I
What?
haven't, no, I didn't.
Oh, didn't? I thought that we had that.
I
But we had
had
to
it.
fill in like things like, did you think about a term? It
Well,
was
so-
25, 100 years, or what?
Well, so I mean, we would like to have it indefinite, so long as we're in operation, then we get it. And God forbid we close, you know, you get it back.
We could do something like 25 years or with a renewal clause or something, and I'd assume that the cost should be nominal, like $1 a year or something. I think you have to probably have some money, but
Consideration.
you'd want to keep it small, but that would be up to you
The
guys.
thought that I had, which, I mean, I'm pretty indifferent, but I calculated it, you know, assuming that if they put the fence up, assuming that we get it back, and it costs $2,000 to remove the fence, I figured over 20 years, that would cost us about $100 a year. I mean, so that was just I really don't care, to be honest, but maybe $8 a month, $100 a year, or something like that.
The situation of dollar is probably just a ceremonial dollar.
For the lifetime of the lease.
Yeah, I'm good with $1. Going to a good cause, so.
Babies, yeah, sorry.
Are you talking about $1 a year, $1 a month?
$1 for the entire lease of the agreement.
Oh, $1 for the period.
Is there anything, yeah,
Well, it's $1 for $1 a year, I don't know if it matters.
It probably does in the legal
Well, most
writing of
leases are
the.
annual. and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
You can put it towards your care center fund.
Okay, 80,000.
Look where your head's at though.
What else do we need to fill in there if we wanted to? Do we need to have this tonight so that we can, or what
So-
sort of?
So our timeline is very quick. I'm waiting, I have the paperwork ready to resubmit for our budget remodification. And so, I'm sorry, if I get it done tonight, then hopefully we will get the approval within the next 4 weeks to move on.
The
So
only,
we-
the only thing I would, just a word of wisdom, you'll have to have a building permit for your fence.
Once we put it up, we don't have to get it to purchase the materials.
Just-
Right.
You might wanna check with me tomorrow on the size and the height and all that, just to, I would
Well,
hate
so-
for you to order your material
I guess
and then
I
have
mean,
it be
it's,
too tall or.
so it's we're doing 4-foot black steel picket.
you
And I
know.
guess when Shoemakers was out, because we did question that, the privacy fence on Butterfield is up to the sidewalk. And that's a 6-foot privacy fence.
I would just call me in the morning and
Okay.
we'll go through the code just to make sure.
Okay,
Yeah, just because it's somewhere else in the city doesn't mean it's up to
I was
code.
gonna say, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't go through a board of adjustment process or something like
sure.
that.
So we measured it a foot back from the sidewalk. Just, I needed a price, basically to know what
I
to
know.
submit for my,
I just,
you know,
I
sure,
would hate for you to
Sure.
order it and then, you know, have something
sure.
snap
I will call you first thing in the morning.
in.
So it'd be nice if we could get this tonight so that we can provide it to her tomorrow morning.
So what about the fence then? I mean, they go out of business, is the fence ours? Do they have to pull it out? Maybe they're gonna take it and that's dealt with?
We can agree to pull it out if that's the easiest. I mean, or we can keep it.
I don't care either way, I just wanna make sure there's not gonna be tie-ups on the back end or something, and it comes back to us, you know?
Yeah. Well, we're getting good at these surplus property auctions.
Yeah, right.
By
I
then,
say at that point, nobody's gonna remember what was done anyway, so it'll have to be dealt with then.
by that time, it might be able to have chickens from Main Street.
Yeah.
Kristen is saying, so the actual materials, potentially through that grant, you know, we will own.
Right, because the care or the child care center is going to actually be the applicant. So the funder is going to award those funds, so they would be the owner of the fence per se. So,
But if it's a
I mean, in that
fixture on
case,
a piece of property,
what's that?
if it's a fixture on a piece of property, would that change the legal?
I don't know where it's federal money that it will. I think they're going to consider that it's still an asset. Now, a lot of the grants, I haven't seen all of the paperwork on this one, but typically there's a time frame. So after that time frame has passed, you know, then I would say that those federal requirements are probably going to go away. But typically, there's like a 7-year asset. No different than like Kibir Solid Waste, when we had bought trucks for them, or when we put something up in the building.
So even if we own it, is that, I mean, what would the impact be, I guess?
I think they're just thinking, you're thinking in terms of a sale, is that what you guys are
Well,
thinking?
like, if the lot comes back to us, how
Yeah.
would we, how hard would it be for us to reclaim it to actually use?
So we could at that
So
point,
in-
we would just remove
The fence, because the fence is
Yeah.
right us.
So we would remove the fence because it would be ours.
And return the property back to the city.
Execute the
Okay.
agreement.
Yeah.
That's fine, as long as that's maybe, as long as that's clear or noted somewhere or whatever. that-
Technically, once a fence is established, it becomes a fixture to the real estate and becomes a part of that real estate, and the owner of the real estate will own the fence. Can't remove it, even if the,
Whatever we need to
Last
do
week.
to,
Yeah.
we're indifferent. We can remove it if we need to, if we close. I mean, it's
I
maybe a
think-
rabbit hole that
We get to a point,
we're
at
not gonna go down.
that point, they probably won't have much use for the fence.
unless we have an agreement to the contrary.
Well, but I'm saying,
Could
if
be
they're,
put in
if
the
they're
lease.
a
Could be
defunct
put in the
entity
lease.
at that point, I don't know if they need a fence or
That
not.
they have.
You know, I don't think they should. Get them there, big deal. So what are we thinking on length? You know, it sounds like we're all in
The
agreement.
way this is written, it says lot 7, block 3, so that's
Whole
the
lot.
entirety of that lot.
No, length of time.
Oh, look.
Oh, yeah, 20 years, 25 years. Well, what is our standard lease agreements?
They're all over the place.
All over. Yeah, whatever, I mean, I can't imagine that it would not get renewed unless there was a good reason, so.
That, 20 years is a fairly long period of time for a lease, as leases go.
I'd say to me-
Normally, you have the right to renewal every so often.
That's what I was thinking, well,
Rather
like 5 or
than
10 year,
A
but,
flat 20 years, but that's up to you folks.
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that we'd ever say no to re-leasing it, but.
I'm good with it, whatever.
I'm gonna 5 year with the renewal, so I'm gonna keep it standard, it's, they're doing, I mean, basically a free one that's not free, but we can have standard terms, and then that way, then obviously probably put something in there with the entity ceases to operate as a child care facility, lease terminates at that point, we can do that, right?
Good.
I'd agree with that. I think 5 years is, I mean, I think it pretty much doesn't matter, but I think 5 years makes sense, and I can't imagine that we wouldn't renew it unless there's a pretty good reason not to, so.
Well, and we could even make it like an auto renew, where
Yeah,
we don't give notice within so many days ahead. We don't have to sit here and
yeah.
necessarily redo it if we don't want to.
Sounds good to me.
Can we just have them vote to authorize us to complete this lease agreement for 5-year renewal for $1 per period, and we can fill in the blanks? Is that close enough, or? I have to adjust some of the language we have here to
That'd be
make it
adequate
fit.
as far as I'm concerned.
For a child care facility.
Yeah, well, I guess, yeah. Glad to make this was just bad and we need to just move to authorize. There's more than 2 of you, I thought that was just 2. The lease contract with the Injury Child Development
You should know this thing,
Incorporated for the lease of, what's the lease?
Lot 7, Block 3.
Lot 7, Block 3, probably in the original town of Ainsworth, Nebraska, for a 5-year, lease with an auto renewal option for, let's go $1 per year, with, the exception recommend that the lease is terminated if the corporation ever ceases to operate as a child care facility.
I like it.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any other discussion?
So same one's gonna be, same type of lease gonna be, given to Alliance Tower?
Are they nonprofit?
We don't like that.
Well, they could use the tower as their jungle gym, I guess, if they.
Okay, we got a motion in a second, go ahead and call the roll.
Sean,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance,
Yes.
Skylar.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. Thanks,
Thank you
ladies.
guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Lisa, I'll call you in the morning and we
Yeah,
can.
yep, sounds good,
Work out the
thank you.
details.
All right. let's-
Should've hung on, there's some surplus fencing here, you could've still kind of.
We're a little regulated on that.
Let's move on to minimum dog maintenance. Gene asked to be on the agenda tonight. So Gene,
Thank you. Yeah, I just think that if we're gonna have dogs in the community, they should have minimal shelter requirements, like a dog house or shed. So can that be written into the ordinance?
I believe adequate care, I mean, there's ordinances in there in regards to animal neglect, things like that, that they basically have to be provided what is adequate for a pet.
Well, that's just it. It's pretty unclear. And I know that there are dogs in this community that are out in the wind, in the rain, in the heat, in the cold, and they have no shelter. And if we're gonna have like minimum space requirements for chickens, we should have it for dogs.
yeah. But I know of one instance, we were talking to the sheriff today, and they have contacted one location and instructed them that they need to do something. If you have others, I don't know if that's, if you have multiple, if they're aware of situations, they will contact the individuals and tell them that they need to.
Right, but then they don't do something.
Well, if you see, I guess,
And I know that.
if you see an animal, I know what happens with horses and cattle and stuff like that, see, when you think it's getting mistreated, I think you call the animal neglect office and
Right.
report it to them and let them investigate it.
Right,
Because there's guidelines that they have that probably override what we have for our own guidelines as humane and stuff for animals.
right. Well, I'm asking for for specific language to be added to the ordinance that they have a shelter. Not a tarp over the kennel or a shade tree. I'm asking for language in the ordinance that requires them to have a doghouse or a shed or something that they can take shelter in. And I don't think that's asking too much.
So I guess I have to look at the ordinance, but we can sure look at it and consider that. I mean, we can't do that tonight, obviously, but we can look at the ordinance and see what it takes to get it to that level.
Right, yeah. I mean, I've heard dog reports where they say, you know, the owners were contacted and the pets appear healthy. Well, they're healthy until they're not, but even if they appear healthy, it just seems kind of cruel to not provide a shelter for a dog.
Agreed.
There is quite a few of them around town too. I just noticed one the other day and that I don't know if the dog was even been off the chain in a week. No dog goes around, just out in the yard. Half the time a bucket of water's dumped over.
I've seen, same way, I've seen them too, and I drive by there and I go, oh, I feel sorry for that dog, you know, that person doesn't deserve to have a dog, but that's not up to me to decide whether, or that person right now, whether that person have a qualified to have a dog or not, or a pet.
Well, you know, you
Did
can
look
use
at-
them for guard dogs or hunting dogs or companion animals, but regardless of what you use them for, they should at least be taken care of. And there are I know there's some dogs there's 3 dogs in a kennel, and they hardly got room to poop and pee without having to have their nose 5 feet from it when they lay down, you know? I mean, that's pretty bad. That's just sad.
I don't know, I'd like to read the ordinance too, because there's a lot of times that it's already in the ordinance, it's just not maybe being enforced like it should or something like that. I bet if we read the ordinance, I bet it'd say something pretty similar to requiring a shelter or a doghouse or something like that.
I read it when, when I had concerns about aggressive dogs. And I don't think it was specific. I don't think it was specific for space, and I don't think it was specific for shelter. I think it was just like, adequate care, those kinds of things.
Yeah, where it would probably fall under this would be how they define cruelly neglect as failing to provide any animal in one's care, whether as owner or custodian, with food, water, or other care as is reasonably necessary for the animal's health.
That's pretty vague.
I kind of agree with her on the fact that we're definitely stating what size and containment the requirements for a chicken are. Not that I want to talk about chickens again. But if we're saying, you have to have this big of a facility to maintain your 6 chickens or whatever it is, I can see where she's coming from, that, you ought to make these people require to have a certain adequate condition for a dog.
We don't permit dogs and cats either. I think that's probably the big difference. We license them to ensure that they have rabies vaccination, so if they bite somebody, they're not spreading rabies. But we don't permit based off of square footage on a yard or, so there are some differences there.
Well, and just even in determining a size, it's a lot easier on chickens because they're generally
All the same.
roughly the same, where you've got what's adequate for one dog is.
Yeah, but I'd much rather have a stipulation on my best friend than my supper. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
People have pets, they should take care of them, that's.
I'm not saying we shouldn't look at this ordinance, I'm saying, I think if we open up this ordinance, there's gonna be a lot of talk. Here myself, I don't think anybody in the town should have more than 2 dogs. And that's gonna that'd be the direction I would go, if you open up an ordinance like that, and then having to maintain them and stuff like that. And I know that's gonna not go over very well, but that's just my opinion. So I think if you start opening up this ordinance, it's gonna get really dicey. I really do. Not saying that we don't need to.
There's definitely problems out there.
Yeah.
But part of the issue, how do we regulate that to a point that's not?
Well, and some of the vagueness is because there's so much difference in dogs especially. Anytime you write a policy, you can't catch everything. So sometimes things are intentionally left a little bit vague so that they can kind of fit all situations better and then allow for some error and manner of interpretation on a case-by-case basis without, wholeheartedly digging your feet in on one. And I don't know whether that's appropriate or not in terms of the shelter question specifically, but there's pros and cons for being really specific in how you write things.
The sheriff's department here is your animal control officer, right? So any calls that would come in about the health of a dog or their conditions would go to the sheriff's department. They would basically do a visual inspection first, or what's the
Correct.
process now if there's a call?
Yep, they would contact the homeowner, the pet owner. I'm sure they check to see whether it's licensed in some cases, make sure it's legal. At least with other ordinances, yes, they check to see if it's a complaint about welfare. I know from visiting with Bruce today, they go out and check that and see. I know in some cases, if the sheriff's office feels that it isn't adequate, just like on a nuisance violation or anything else, they're given a certain number of time to respond to that and remedy it. Otherwise, there is a course within the ordinance to issue citation which of course would be a court date and a fine if they didn't remedy it.
You open this up to dogs, you know, do you have to cover the cats then too?
City can't
Well,
afford
if
that.
somebody comes and complains about it, then maybe, but
I'm
so
sure if
far-
you open it up to, there's gonna be, like you love dogs, and the next person's gonna say, I love cats as much as other people love their dog, and you're gonna have to start doing something with the cats too.
Careful,
I
the
can
city
see
owns
this-
a whole lot of cats on the south side of town.
I guess you could consider the storm sewers, you could consider
Yeah,
those
they're
as
adequate
cat
shelter.
houses.
Yeah.
Adequate shelter.
Shelter.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so there may be other people that advocate for more, fewer animals or, you know, other things. But I am simply asking for every dog to have a shelter.
Can we,
And that it be specifically put in the ordinance so that there's no judgment call. They don't have to guess. Just, you know, because even though it's not a permitted type of thing, we can still require that, right?
can we have the ordinance ready for next meeting and discuss it then, kind of what might be?
Well,
Could
that's
it be
what I
as
was
simple
gonna-
as adding into that definition of cruelty neglect, I mean, you've got food, water, can you just add shelter? I mean, we don't need to be
What kind of shelter?
specific on it.
Right.
But again, that gets back to the ambiguity of that officer has got to use some judgment in some of these.
Is it shelter 24 hours a day, or if it's, hey, my dog sleeps inside, they're just outside when I'm at work?
For example, I put my dog
What
in the
she's
backyard.
saying, she wants something in black and white, so there's no gray area.
I do, and even if you're at work and the dog comes inside, oh, what if it rains and snows and blows while you're at work? And the dog don't have any shelter? And it's really hot, and the dog don't have any shade?
The state regulates kennels, and they do have certain guidelines that we could look at to see if you wanted to follow that. I don't know, that might give you a guide at least.
Well, I don't know, you know, nobody's coming in advocating for other aspects of the ordinance, so I guess I'm not really so worried about that. I just think a shelter is pretty minimum. And a tarp over the kennel is not a shelter. You know?
Well, that's one problem, is some people may consider that a shelter, but, Gene, I'll tell you, we will look at the, language of the ordinance, see what we can come up with. If, I would recommend if you find something, if you happen to find something that you say, hey, this fits what we need, send that over here to the city office and we'll see if we can incorporate that into,
We can kind of do the same thing we did with our chickens, we can check what other communities have
Yep.
for ordinances and what they maybe have written in theirs and might address, because that's kind of where we got our chicken ordinances through
Yep.
other communities, and they might have something like that in theirs.
exactly. Does that sound good? We can
That's-
look at it, we will
that's
definitely
good.
look at it, we'll
Thank you
follow
for
your
considering
request
that.
and, see what we can come up with on language that might be appropriate. All right, let's move up to consider resolution number 22-12, the annual certification of program compliance and signing resolution with the Nebraska Board of Public Roads classifications and standards.
So this document essentially is just certifying that we keep certain records that can be available upon inspection if anyone from the state of Nebraska would like to come inspect them. And this is part of how we receive our highway allocation funding from the state. We used to collect all these documents and send them into the state, and the state would review them. Now they've changed that rule, we don't have to send them in anymore, we just have to maintain them. So our internal process really hasn't changed, we're just certifying that yes, we have those documents available. Now the revenues and expenses and all that are incorporated into the lane mile report, which is in July, so. That's basically what this document is saying.
Off the top of your head, you know how much we get from the state?
Oh, I knew I should have looked at that before I came in.
I'm sure we've talked about it before. I wanna
and
say
of
it's
course
like
it was in the
50, 60
budget.
grand maybe or
It's more
something
than
like-
that.
Is it more than
It's
that?
like 190.
Is it that much? Okay.
160 $70.
That's okay, I'm just more curious than anything.
It's enough that we definitely.
Well, yeah.
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 We definitely wanna do what we can to receive it, so,
Does that just go into your general street budget when you,
street budget, yep.
Dumb question, but should probably be asked, but do we do all those things?
We do, yes, in fact,
Probably
As-
good to know before you take action.
as Lloyd Smith is our street superintendent, he gets copies of all those documents as well, since he's also certifying that we have those documents.
I move to approve resolution number 22-12.
Second.
Annual certification program compliance and signing resolution with the Nebraska Board of Public Roads Classifications and Standards.
Still second.
Moved by Skylar, second by Sean. Any other
No,
discussions?
I thought I was done too.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Brad,
Yes.
Vance,
Aye.
Skylar,
Aye.
Sean.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. All right, let's move on to discuss and consider the counter proposal by Tower Alliance for the American Tower lease with the city of Greenville. More than $1 every 5 years.
Do
You want me to go ahead?
introduce this? Go ahead.
Well, back in May, you may recall, we proposed a counter proposal to the Tower Alliance LLC, an American tower vendor, and that we suggested that the present lease be amended and extended an additional 10 years from December 31st, 2036. And that in exchange for that, the monthly rental would be $700 per month with an annual increase of 3% per year.
That was their proposal?
That was our.
That was ours.
That was our proposal to them.
Okay, sorry.
They came back just recently, it sat, and we didn't hear from them. This was sent to the lady that was handling this at the time. Little did we know that she quit her job or got fired or something, and it dropped through the holes in the company and nothing happened, so we fired it up again and asked them what was going on, and finally, they, after going through a couple of more people, we got down to a fellow by the name of David Albergo with the company, and he suggested adding 2 5-year terms. That would put it to 2046. Well, we suggested that, and then they require at least 4 5-year terms as a minimum, they say, instead of 2 5-year terms. And they would increase the annual rent from $5,400, which it is now, to $8,400, which is what we suggested at $700 a month. And provide a $7,500 bonus one-time payment with a 3% escalation per year. Adding then the following terms: a limited right of first refusal, confidentiality, and a non-compete. So they want us to respond to their proposal.
They want us to sign a non-compete clause.
Yeah, where would that come into, how could that affect us in the future, or the city in the future?
that you wouldn't put up a tower right next to the one you've already got is basically what a non-compete would be, because they've
Would it
already
be right
got
next
the
to
lease
it, or
on
any
you.
place else in town? I mean,
I don't
what
know.
did, what's the stipulation of the non-compete?
I think it would be a total non-compete.
Don't we-
It can't
we
be
don't.
any.
Don't we lease out like the water tower for some services and things like that?
No,
But
you had a
we don't.
proposal once, but you didn't do it.
So we own, then this, we've done a couple of these. One we own the just own the ground and they're leasing that.
We just own the ground right now.
So it's not like we even have a tower, we're in the business of putting up towers to it. So to understand it right, that non-compete would basically, we're not going to go build our own tower.
Well, it's not the
It's
tower,
not-
it doesn't say
If
it's
somebody
not
else
a
comes in
tower
and wants to
or.
lease ground from the city for a similar tower, does that fall under the
I
non-compete?
assume that that's what they mean by not allowing anybody to compete with them.
Well, Vance, and that might have been before you were on the council, because I, long ago, I forgot about it, but we did have a proposal once to put something on the water tower. Somebody asked to lease that for some thing.
There's some down there, there's water tower over here.
Or, yeah, whichever one, but would that violate the non-compete?
Probably.
Should we ask for a definition of the non-compete, or did they provide anything?
They did not, all they did is,
So, hold on, I just wanna be clear on this, so they agreed to the amount, but they wanna extend it for 10 years, and they'll give us a bonus of 7,500, and they want us to sign the non-compete, the confidentiality, and the, what was the other one?
Right, first refusal.
Right of first refusal.
I guess I'd like to know how defined that non-complete is on a tower. Say, for example, the fire department wants to put up a big tower behind the fire station, to put some more antennas on, not saying we're gonna do that, but just for example,
Yeah.
are we able to do that? And put some antennas on it for better reception.
you know,
Well, you wouldn't be competing with whatever they're doing, that's.
But it doesn't, I'd like to have it specified that, if they say a non-complete for a tower.
That's the only one, the only thing.
I think it means competing with their business and the people that hang things on their tower. They wanna have the exclusive right in the area so that they get all the business, basically.
As-
I'm assuming it, but.
The rest of it, sounds fine to me, I guess, but I don't know, I'd say no to the non-compete. Just, I mean, even if we don't, if we get even close to that deal, I don't wanna have to fight them over something, or,
We don't tell anybody what we're paying.
I've already said what it is.
What about confidentiality?
I was just
Yeah, maybe we should ask for definitions on.
If they come in and somebody says, well, what's your agreement with the tower company that's got the tower out there?
Well, you know where they don't want that, because at least in the state of Nebraska, all of us cities talk to each other and we share those documents with each other. And that's how we know what to counter propose with, which is actually keeps it so that these companies can't have a monopoly.
But how can we not do that when we're using taxpayers' money? We gotta tell them what we're spending it on,
Well, I
and
was
how much
just
we're
gonna
spending.
say, I don't
And
know,
that'd be almost a topple.
I don't know that we can agree to the confidentiality part.
But, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. You're talking about things you have no idea of what you're talking about. So you're gonna have to get, so in essence, you can kind of agree to what they're talking, but you've gotta get the lease and read the lease until you know exactly what they are talking about. So in theory, you might be able to, you can tell them, yeah, we might be able to agree to the confidentiality and the non-compete. We're gonna have to see the lease to see exactly what we would be agreeing to. Otherwise, we sit here and talk for the next 5 hours on it and have no idea what we're talking about.
What about the term? We pretty well set in stone that we wanted to give them 2 5-year extensions, which is a 10 to 2046, and they want 4 5-year terms, which is
If
20 years.
If I remember right, that was what their original proposal, we
Yeah.
kept that back.
Yeah.
We thought, well, let's just go 10 years, we don't wanna commit too far. So apparently that was a big deal for them.
But they agreed to the 3% increase.
They did.
Yeah, they agreed to the money, we should ask for more, they didn't even try to negotiate that.
We still can.
If they want
Now,
their
there's a lot of
extra
money
2
in this. I mean, it's,
If they
There's
want those
other
extra 2-year
communities that are
terms,
getting a lot more money.
So, sounds like we can't really take any action, there's too many what-ifs in this deal, so I'd make a motion, we table this to get better clarification on the lease agreement.
Do you wanna offer a counter proposal, say, we'll go with the extra 10 years, but for that, we need another 5,000 a year or whatever.
Another
get extra
80,000.
money. Yeah.
There's your care center money right there.
That's our opportunity to go higher. See, we already said this level, but now we've got an opportunity to go higher and see if they'll bite.
Assume 50% ownership.
Yeah, along with this lease, you get half a care center.
I would say
if we go with the
I'll-
extra 2 years, we get some more money out of it.
And maybe they can pay the taxes on
Well, we got a motion.
I made a motion to table this
More specifics.
Yeah.
to be more, to gather more information and to renegotiate the lease contract.
Second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion?
So basically, we're gonna take the month, think about it, come back in November with, if we're gonna take the extra 10 years, what else do we want?
Yeah.
But I think in the meantime, you could probably get some clarification on the confidentiality and, but yeah, you brought up a good point there about if we're extending that from 2 5 years to 4 5 years, because we have the opportunity to raise the dollars.
See what they say.
Well, yeah, and 3% does not seem like much when inflation's 9, so.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and call a vote.
it. Vance,
Aye.
Skylar, Sean,
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. All right, let's move on to 30-minute parking and general parking on Main Street. Chief Baker asked to be on the agenda. Please,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you. I'm a client of Don's family practice down there, and I also get some drugs at the Ainsworth Drug, and I see Ainsworth Drug has a half-hour parking sign in front of their business. I called, talked to somebody here at the city, and they said, well, that's been there a number of years. When Home Health was down in that location, that's when they applied for and got that half-hour parking. And I think that sign, I'm not saying the drugstore doesn't deserve to have it too, because there are handicapped people who need to get in and out of the drugstore. But I think there should need to be some restricted parking in front of Don Family Practice, so if there's a chance that somebody that has limited ability can get in there. But I actually think there ought to be a handicap spot there when the state does their street project, but that's another matter. Don did have a sign there that said something like, please leave a space for handicapped patients or something like that, and somebody sent the sheriff down there and said he was gonna write her a ticket if she didn't take that sign in. I don't think that was right.
I think that sign had more saying on it.
The
Sign
sign
said,
said,
"Parking
parking for
for
non-family
non-family
practice only, violators will be towed," and she has no authorization to do that in public parking. It wasn't a please leave space for patients. It was very clear of, this is my parking spot and you can't use it. And those rights don't go along with the ownership of the building. That is public parking on a public street. She had no authorization to put that in place. So that's, just to be quite frank, that's a mischaracterization of what happened. The city asked several times for her to remove it off the sidewalk. She did not. The sheriff came, she did not remove it. After that, I think the sheriff had to go at least
Had to visit twice.
a couple times. So I just want to put that to bed right away.
And I think she's been advised that she's welcome to request a 30-minute parking, handicap parking. I mean, the 30-minute parking that you referenced, that was passed by a council many years ago, so that's an ordinance. And the council has the authority to do that. But it brings up the question, well, do we reserve parking in front of each business on Main Street, or how do you handle that? I think, personally, I would say, well, if we need to open up parking on Main Street, maybe we should have 2-hour parking on Main Street, or 1-hour parking. Or, it would be a time frame could be open to discussion, obviously, but that might be one way to handle it if she's having trouble with, available parking spaces for clients, but as Vance said, it's public parking.
I do agree that, in my opinion, it's a whole new ballgame when it's a medical place. You say give every business on Main Street, we want that, but I think when it comes down to being medical, I think that there should be, like the pharmacy has. I don't think every business in Ainsworth deserves one, but when it comes to medical, I mean,
How is medical any different than, say, at the post office? Everybody needs to do mail.
you know, you're dealing with
The banks,
health and well-being,
everybody
human
needs to
life.
bank.
Again, I feel like every business, if they require parking for their clients, then they should take that into account and in their business plan provide that. And that might mean having your own parking lot or whatever where you, and that's just my feeling, but I understand what you're saying.
And like that 30-minute parking, okay, the ordinance years ago, and maybe they had a plan back then to how to enforce it. You know, the one in front of the pharmacy, is that being enforced? Is that, is somebody stopping watching that? You know, I know I'm getting nitpicky, but, you know, is somebody there an hour? And using that for public parking, for going into the gym or something like that in the morning, there's no, or whatever. Who is going to enforce if you have another 30-minute parking in several different places on Main Street? How's that gonna get enforced?
Well, probably the owner that has the vested interest in it would
You notice it,
complain, you
report it,
know,
but
yeah.
then it's
If
gotta
it was
be
causing a
on.
problem, I would imagine they would complain.
I think it's just simple respect that most people would have in Ainsworth. If it said half-hour parking, they wouldn't park there much more than a half an hour, most of the time.
Anytime I ever went to get a medication from the pharmacy, those two spots are open if I need to pull in, run it real fast and leave. I never have a problem getting one of the two spots.
I've never been able to go those two spots.
Really?
Yeah, every time I go to the pharmacy, I've got to park way down by the park.
Maybe we just go at different times.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. I go right before they close.
So we have 15-minute parking signs out in front of the community center, and that's violated all the time.
Well, if people are sick or injured,
There's no, I mean, like right now, there's a, because it's right next to our business, and there's a pretty good step. If you've got handicap issues, I wouldn't think that's the place you'd be parking anyway, because that is a pretty substantial step up. If you've got, you know, if she's got patients that are wheelchair bound or whatever, getting them up, they're gonna have to park down on by the post office or by the
Where there's a-
end of that other block as it is now to find a ramp to get up onto that sidewalk if you've got, I mean, substantial handicap
I
issues.
agree with that. It's a great idea to put in a handicap ramp there.
is
And
there,
Well, I don't think we can keep putting in it, it goes back to the same thing, especially with our population. How do you determine one business versus another as far as
it's a
who's
medical
deserving of it?
business.
And
As a
people
matter
with
of fact,
handicap
the
issues.
day I was there was a fellow in a wheelchair in her waiting room. He had to come either at the post office or wherever someplace else handicap ramp is.
What I'm saying, and regardless of what business they go to, the same argument could be made, they have to
You've got a
conduct a
couple
business
spots
that's
back
not
there.
just medical. They gotta go to the bank, they've gotta go to their insurance agent, they've gotta go to whatever else you've got up and down Main Street. How do we determine what business is deserving of a handicap spot and what is not?
Well, it's easy. Anybody can see if it was a medical business or not, that was probably qualified for it. The rest of the people could ask for it, and you decide at that time whether you would put up a half-hour parking or a handicap ramp.
I think you also take into account when you locate your business, what your parking situation might potentially be as well. You need to take that into consideration when you're opening a business, on what that might be for your customers.
Keith, do you know, does she have any parking in the back? You know,
I believe she does, yeah.
you know, and that's probably, she can pull up the
She parks out back.
Well,
Her
maybe
main
she-
complaint is the real estate agency next door pull up there and park right in front of her business and sit there all day.
well, there's public parking, so they can do that, so.
Yeah.
I mean, so if she's got people that are needing a wheelchair and stuff like, maybe needs to do adequate parking in the alley, so they can, maybe walk close to the door.
They'd have to come in through her storeroom or whatever she has in
Well,
the
she
back
might have
of
to
the room.
redesign that or something. I'm not trying to argue anything like that, but there's other avenues for her to have parking, or not just her, other businesses, if they want private parking in the alley. Because come doing, 2024, she's probably gonna have to utilize that back in when they do all that construction, because there won't be no parking or no entrance to the front.
Right,
What about,
that's right, but that'll be temporary.
with the sidewalks coming in, what about the possibility of just putting, like, in the middle of each block, a handicap ramp?
To have it ripped out in a year.
I think
no, I'm
with
saying
the
like,
new-
on both sides of the,
Regardless of what business.
regard, like, not looking at the businesses there, just for the sake of, you know, the people that are, you know, even the people who go work at a thrift store, you know, or whatever. But on the middle of each block, on both sides of the street, just have one handicap ramp.
If I remember right, on the, when we had that state meeting here, they were going to add several more handicaps on each block, weren't they?
Yeah,
There
there's a
is.
couple of places on the, what would it be, the east side that have a couple of steps from the sidewalk up into the business. I think last I talked to Mark Kovar, they're gonna redo that and turn those steps into a ramp.
Yeah, I think they're
So
adding some
they
more
are-
handicap.
Yeah, because I think actually the state has to meet ADA.
That's what I was gonna say, I think a lot of this is, it's a state highway, they're gonna have some rules and regulations on what they allow too.
We have two customers at the thrift store who are wheelchair bound.
Mhm.
I guess it's not so unusual.
Got an aging population in the town, I mean,
They're there and they go to every business.
What do you have any handicap parking on Main Street right now, like next to
It's off
next to
street.
the intersections? Oh, it's all off Main?
Yeah, when I just, in the code book, they're identified as the first spot on the west side of Third and then the first spot on the east side of Second.
And then there's one right next to the post office, which is sort of in an unfortunate place, but it is the best access for a wheelchair, which
Oh,
is
wow.
right in that little alley.
Yes, okay.
Kind of blocks the drive to the drop.
But again, that's places where they don't have to deal with that
Mhm.
massive curb.
I don't know if it makes any difference or not, that, 5 years ago when I put up my new building, there was some sort of code or some sort of ordinance, because I used to have, 2 steps going into my old building that burned. And when we redid that and redesigned that, I don't remember if it was it code that I had to do that? And mine I could have no steps in my building, I had to do the
That's-
sidewalks.
Pretty much with all zoning, I would say as a general rule, that an existing business that was there prior to new codes being adopted is sort of grandfathered in, but as soon as you rebuild or make a change, then you have to come in and compromise.
that Dawn's is pretty close to the center of the block, isn't it?
Yeah,
Pretty close. I mean, to
and home
me,
health, doesn't matter, it's almost next door, I think there may be a business between them, but
I think it'd be worth looking into, if it wouldn't be much of a challenge to put just consistent, like I said, maybe just one, like in the middle of every block. I don't think it'd be a bad idea to have access more regular anyway. I mean, that it wouldn't be contingent on the business necessarily, but I mean, the people that do need to use the handicap, walk, they wouldn't have to go, all the way down the block,
Short
be a lot closer for them. Since we're doing that project anyway, I don't know what it'd take, but maybe it'd be pretty easy to just throw in some.
I think we run into curbing, slope-ish, they can only have so much of a slope, that's
Yeah.
gonna be a really
And maybe-
steep slope if you did a ramp
And that may
that
be,
way,
like,
that's, I just, I get what you're saying, and maybe talk about it when they're looking at the redesign.
that's what I'm saying.
With
Maybe just
Olson's
reach
and-
out to them and see what they think. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to ask them. I mean, and maybe it is a complicated.
It can only be a, 6%, is it 6% grade is
1
the,
in 12.
that they, the maximum they can have?
Not much. Then you're gonna have drainage problems.
That's, so you
No,
just run
the-
into so much.
The gutter,
Right, well, that'd be, for the question for the engineers, I guess, but that's what I'm saying. I mean,
I don't think it hurt to take a look into it, like Skylar says, I agree with that, it wouldn't hurt to just at least ask a few questions.
Well, aren't we gonna lose parking spaces downtown anyway when it goes through that renovation?
13?
I thought Mark had told me 16 at one time, but that might not
they
keep having
I
to.
thought,
pretty much,
they go around the corner, I think you're losing about 30 spaces.
No, not that many, it's below 20. I was thinking 13, but Lisa might think 16, so it's in that area.
And yeah, you do lose some parking, that is correct, about that. The pro and the con, that's the con. The pro is increased visibility when
Which
you're
is
turning from the
needed.
side street.
Absolutely.
The Second and Main is.
And it's a shorter pedestrian cross.
Yeah, with the size of vehicles today, you are taking your chances coming out of Second and Third Street at Main. Second Street
Second
more
Street
than
is
Third,
going
even if you're
eastbound.
going west.
I
Yeah,
won't,
going
I won't,
east,
yeah, I won't
going
do it in
east.
my car, I just go around
It's
and
hard
get
when you have
lost.
a short vehicle.
Yeah, because you got long vehicles
Especially when
sticking
there's
out.
snow. The snow just adds another layer of complication.
Well, I don't own a business downtown, but if I did, given that these additional, these parking places are gonna be eliminated, I would not want my neighbor's employees to be parking in front of my store for their 8-hour shift, and then my own customers can't get in, so, or they have to park a block away or whatever. So you may want to institute some, 2-hour parking at some points, once that project takes off.
That's, in my mind, that's a good solution, but that's just one of
Yeah.
mine.
Could go old school and put in parking meters.
There you go.
Parking meters.
Oh.
Fund the care center.
Yeah, pay for that care center.
I think
Quickest
Ainsworth
way to
might
stop
have had
all-way
parking
parking,
meters a
put in
long time
meters.
ago.
Most of them did. Most small communities tried it.
We'd have to get a meter maid. Lovely Rita meter maid, isn't that an old
Well,
song?
they had meters here in the 40s.
No,
Or-
it's-
What do you wanna
I
do, or
thought
what
that
do you
we
do?
had them.
Read
Can I
them
borrow your
right.
bike?
Well, Keith, I'm not sure what to tell you. I would mention that I'm aware of at least a couple other instances of businesses on Main Street that were putting out signs, no parking, and that is concerning when everybody starts putting out a sign that says, hey, this is my spot, don't park here. We were talking about public parking, like Vance said earlier, and,
What if it's issues with neighboring businesses, employees parking in front? That conversation been had between them, is that, it seems like they get a lot of things, and sometimes it's maybe something neighbors can get along better or operate alongside each other better, and it hits our desk before it hits that conversation between neighbors. I know some businesses do have a policy, hey, employees are not parking on Main Street, we want that for customers. When I worked at the bank, that's how we worked, they're all parked down the side street. And if the Methodist Church had something, funeral or something, we made sure we were even parked away from there. Just being mindful of, hey, small town, we gotta work and live next to each other. I think, well, and really, home health's a pretty good example of why I don't really get too excited about wanting to put in specific parking restrictions for specific businesses. I mean, right now, it looks like that 30-minute parking was put in place because it's a pharmacy. Really, that's just by happenstance, that there was a home health, and then
Right.
a pharmacy decided randomly to be in the back half of a bookstore. So for a while there, I presume, and I don't pay attention to it, I don't park there anytime, so I didn't, well, until we started having parking issues, I wasn't even aware it was 30-minute parking, but it was probably really weird to have 30-minute parking right in front of just a bookstore at the time when that home health had moved and the pharmacy wasn't in yet, so.
So you're saying Dawn could apply for that?
She could come to the council and request that for a business. I guess I'll say I'm not in favor of doing that for specific businesses. Now, something like that 2-hour through the day on Main Street, maybe that's something we can look at. Again, it comes down to whether or not it's gonna get enforced. It's gonna have to come down to a reporting issue, if someone in that business notices, and then if it gets enforced from there, we'll see. But,
I think I would just take.
I'd be a lot more open to that than picking and
Sign
choosing.
down in front of the bookstore and move it up to between home health and the medical facility, or virtually side by side, move the half-hour sign up there.
But
How long it takes to figure that out?
well, the pharmacy's still there, so are you saying the pharmacy now doesn't deserve 30-minute parking? They're medical. I mean, that was our justification for moving, putting one there, so.
No, it wasn't.
Then we're picking and
Home
choosing.
health.
It was,
Still
but now it's
for
a
home
pharmacy.
health, but now you're saying you don't want it in front of home health. Is that right?
No, I'm saying, the example of home health, the business moved. We're talking about putting in permanent infrastructure restrictions on businesses that could cease to exist or move locations. So basically, Dawn, well, she'd have to change her back room to let people through. You think it's better for us to change our front-facing infrastructure of the city,
I think it's
rather
pretty
than the
easy,
business owners make adjustments on their back-end infrastructure, if they've got parking back there that they could use for handicap parking, make an adjustment in their back to let people through, maybe it's a little hallway you could get through. So it's better to tear up the sidewalk or do whatever we need to do, put in signs, restrict parking, than have the businesses own. Not all of them have parking in the back, but some, if they do, again, that's a consideration when you're looking at a location for a business. Do you have the adequate parking for your customers? I'm not terribly in favor of picking and choosing up and down Main Street who we're gonna give special parking access to. And I think in the new parking plans, I think they're adding in the on Main Street handicap spots where those handicap ramps are gonna be.
Yeah,
We're adding more handicap.
they're
than we
adding
currently have.
handicap ramp on both ends
Yep.
of each block.
Yep, I think it's gonna
And
be an
taking away a
improvement.
parking spot there.
Mhm.
So there's other couple
To
of
give
places.
room for handicap and safety for pedestrians and people crossing the other way. We'll lose some parking spots, but to be quite honest, I'm on Main Street every day, and it's not like people are clamoring up and down to be on Main Street in Ainsworth, Nebraska. We've got the spots to afford for public safety.
Yeah, there's other places on Main Street that would ask for it too, you know, you got Sand Hill Rehab, that's a, you know,
Medical facility.
that's a medical facility, are they gonna?
Honestly, if it's the one business that they're concerned about, I know a lot of people in that building. I think a simple conversation of, hey, would you guys be willing not to park right in front of us during the day, might go a long way and avoid more of this. I don't know if that's been done. I can't imagine the people in that building would have said, hell no, we're parking wherever we want. I just, knowing the people in that building, if that's the issue, I would think a simple conversation might solve a lot of this.
Now, a lot of it, I think, might have been the type of sign she put up. That business, I should say she, that business put up that, the authority that went up.
I guess the only other thing I would add is, I really think we're all spoiled in Ainsworth. If you live in a bigger city, and holy cow, you might have to parking garage and walk a quarter mile to get to anything. And so if we have to walk 75 yards to a business, you know, we're lucky. We're lucky. We should be happy.
And the angled parking is nice, you know, other communities have parallel parking, that's a little scary when you've got a lot of trucks, you know, going back and forth. So we are, I think, privileged in that way to have the width there to be able to have the angled parking.
Anything else, Keith? I don't
Thank you.
think we're gonna be making any motions tonight or anything. I personally think that if it is a problem on Main Street, that a 2-hour limit or something might be a way to open
Yeah, I think
things
about
up.
something widespread, if we
That
can
would
look
be-
at that.
Yeah, that would cover everybody, and that would make available spots regularly opening. And if they didn't move, why, then they could get turned in. I mean, I understand the enforcement part is difficult for,
And that'd keep the people that are working on Main Street from parking on
and they
Main
know
Street.
they're not supposed to park on Main Street. And they might have to walk a half a block to work.
Is Olson's planning to come up here again anytime soon? Do you have any idea?
I don't know that they have a plan to.
Is they, I
But
think,
that's not really necessarily in Olson's preview, I mean, purview, that's a DOT. And then I suppose there can be certain conversations that the city can have in terms of our wants and wishes, but DOT designs that plan.
gotcha.
Thanks for coming, Keith.
Thanks for your time.
Let's move on to the exciting opening of a sealed bid for surplus fencing materials. Is that, this is it?
That's it.
One bid?
Looks like a birthday card or something. All right, we only received one bid, so unless you guys determine that it's not acceptable, I don't think there should be a lot of decision making. Richard DeKerney bid $150 on the fence. One bid for $150 for the surplus fence.
Was there more there than that? Was it just fencing, or do you have other stuff?
Just fencing.
Well, I
There's
think
some
there's
rolls of chain link
PVC
fencing and
slats.
then a few slats of PVC.
And you have to take it all, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I guess if he wants to take part of it to the dump.
He can, yeah, but as long as he's,
Do it.
we're doing it so we can kind of clean up that area.
So no problem taking homework, she'll find a use for
Oh,
it.
yeah, okay.
We're inch of it.
I used to want some stuff left behind and we're still on home now. We have to clean up ourselves anyway.
Need like,
I assume we have to vote to accept the bid.
I guess I move to accept the bid, from Richard Perney for $150 for all of that fencing, including the roll and the panels.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? Go ahead and call roll.
Skylar,
Aye.
Sean,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Sam.
Motion carried unanimously. And if I'm not incorrect, we got everything, and brings us to Lisa's report.
So really that we've closed the fiscal year in, here in first couple of weeks of October, so that's finished and finalized. We did hire a new driver for the garbage truck. His name is Jade Eagle. He started a week ago, and we were pretty pleased to have him on board. And just a couple of things, I just really put this in here for you to take a look at, not that you have to comment on it necessarily tonight, but when I met with Larm, going over our new coverage year, some conversations came up about some ways maybe we could save some money. Our deductibles on some of our vehicles and equipment's pretty low. We don't really ever have any claims. So I think in the 7 years that I've been here, we've maybe had 1 or 2 claims. So for the cost, maybe it's worth, looking at some of that. We talked about sewer backup a little bit. We don't have that coverage right now. I don't know if the cost isn't that great. Maybe that's something the council wants to add.
Is that sewer, if somebody's house backs up because it's our fault, we have cover, we don't have any coverage for them, or
Right.
any
so
damage to their
basically, we're
property.
just
How
kind of
big,
negotiating that right now.
Okay.
And in fact, I mean, I'll be honest, the 7 years, again, that I've been here, I can't speak to prior to that, but we've not had a claim that has necessarily come forward.
how could you?
There've been a few since I've been, there've been a few over the years
We
where it
had one
backed
that,
up.
We had a water backup.
we had one that was potentially gonna be litigated, and then it didn't, that litigation didn't get filed, so.
See, I think backups happen all the time around town, but I don't know how you prove it was the city versus.
We had one claim a while back that sort of got debunked also, so it didn't actually go to where the city, it cost the city. So right now, Larm is actually handling a lot of that for us, we just don't actually have coverage. So for the $300 or $600 for the year, I didn't know if that's something we wanted to consider adding, especially if you increase the deductibles on some of this other, you definitely, the savings would, cover the cost to add that. So just something, I guess, to consider, and if you have a strong thought on it.
We just have that lining of all the sewer lines and everything, right, so maybe we oughta,
It's not on all the sewer lines, no.
Yeah.
It's,
maybe we oughta just give it a year and make sure that there's no problems with that or something.
If I remember right, it was the last one, a lift station not working properly that backed up into the lowest ones. It was over on the west end, I wanna say, the last ones I remembered, is that your
Right.
recollection?
yeah, I'd
That
have
backed
to
up in the
look
base,
at
in the
that.
basement when we had a lift station that wasn't working up to snuff.
Once the city got rid of that truck that blow people off their toilet seat, the backups aren't
That's
very
Johnson
many.
Service that does that.
Yeah, well, the city had a truck though that would do that, we got rid of it.
That does happen, unfortunately, yes. So it's just something to consider because, in our business, of course, that is, the likelihood of something like that happening is, it could happen, so.
Especially on my end of town.
Anybody that's on the end of the line, is probably higher risk of that. So just, I guess, something to consider, and if you have a thought on it, you can shoot me an email, one way or the other. I just wanted you to be aware of it. just a comment, we had some kids working on the community cleanup day that the school held. They got a lot of work done, I'll tell you that, especially out at the park. For no more kids than there were, man, they really go. They got a lot of stuff painted out there and a lot of cleaning done in here, so thanks for that. We've been working with Olson again, Highway 7, funding clean water and drinking water state revolving loan fund. We've put in applications to both of those, so we'll see how that shakes out. And garbage toters, we are in the process of delivering those new cans. So that's gonna take us a while, you know. They've probably got, I would say, what, a third to not quite half dispersed.
But today wasn't a fun day to disperse them.
Yeah, the weather's not really working in our favor, that's for sure.
Blowing all over.
Mine was, I had to go retrieve it.
So in the meantime, you know, until we get all the toters disseminated, we're gonna be kind of running a combination garbage service of old truck, new truck. But the routes are staying the same, so in terms of everybody's designated day,
Has there been any problem with that new truck on the current routes?
not that I'm aware of. So,
I'll tell the guys thank you on the one, we had already had one of the older cans filled when the new one got delivered, so we put them both out
well, we're
this week and they
trying to work with
They
everybody.
did take care of that one, so
We
we
know
won't use
that
the old ones anymore, but we already had one.
There's gonna be
full,
some
so.
chaos and confusion, so we'll try to get everybody picked up regardless, just, you know, make sure that we're, doing what we need to do too.
So basically, you can't use your old install anymore.
If you have your new can, we're asking everybody to start using the new can. When you get it, I think that's just maybe tries to decrease some of the chaos.
They're good size, obviously,
It is
pretty,
good.
pretty good, but, I mean, pretty well built, but I thought they were pretty nice.
They're not that heavy when they're.
No, and especially they roll so nice and easy, even for, I would say for a lot of people,
Yeah,
they're gonna be easier than their
those
smaller ones that they didn't have the good wheels on, that's,
So, yeah.
And I know it's windy, and so that's not a good look for us at the moment, but, I did get a report from the garbage crew that people are putting, concrete and bricks in the bottom of their can. And so I just advise people, please don't do that.
It's not gonna work.
Because they're gonna get dumped into the truck. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's just not a good solution for that. If you can pull it up next to your house or your garage or whatever to try to keep it from the wind is probably the best.
It's not like it's a new problem either though. I mean, some people, if they just set their bags out, it is, but for me, I always used a can, and windy days, I'm either running up to Becky O'Hare to get my can, or down to Chops, so.
So, yeah, and I'm hoping as we run the new truck and people see it and see that it's actually picking the can up and dumping the can, you know, that common sense will rule today, that don't put weighted materials in the bottom of your can, cause it's just gonna get driven off with the truck, so.
So what doesn't, so, I'm like Greg here, I've got, my cans in the back still have some trash in them, but they've already started picking up on the front. So do I just need to take those cans to the dump myself?
Yeah, if, you know, however you wanna do that, if you wanna.
Well, I guess for the sake of other people that might happen to, should they put the old cans out with a new can, or should they just figure out?
Nope, I would say either, if you can, if they're bagged, transfer the bags into the new can. Or I guess if there's a real specific situation where you can't do that, just call the office and we will arrange, something.
The phone was ringing regularly the last 2 days.
I'm sure. There'll be a lot of kinks to work out for the first month or
Yep.
so.
No, it's
And we
like-
expected that.
Yeah,
It's part of the deal.
Transition is tough on everybody, including us, you know, there's kinks to work out, so don't hesitate to call. We'll figure it out one way or another and work together to get it done, so.
That's all, I guess I should have reported in my marriage report that we did have the City Employee Appreciation Day in September. It was well attended and it was a good time, nice evening out at the golf course. They did a meal for us and have a little fun. It was enjoyable. I think the employees appreciated it and had a good day. Good
That's
afternoon.
Thank you to the council, for allowing us to do that.
Oh, so, unless anybody else has something for the good of the cause, we're gonna adjourn at 6:39. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see what the headline says about the city hiring the mayor's lead golf partner.
I wasn't involved in the interviews.
Hey, I didn't even know until after.
I guess
Two league partners, oh my.
nepotism, they has to be related, isn't it, for nepotism?
Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, now,
Cronyism would be this case with league
Yeah.
golf,
really what
right?
you need to look at is if he's not in his handicap next year, if he still has a job. That's where you start thinking about it. Yeah, well,
Good one there.
oh, I know. At least it's in-